Chapter 10 of the Nursery Alice by Lewis Carroll. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Mad Tea Party. This is the Mad Tea Party. You see, Alice had left the Cheshire Cat and had gone off to see the March Hare and the Hatter as the Cheshire Cat had advised her, and she found them having tea under a great tree with a dormouse sitting between them. There were only those three at the table, but there were quantities of teacups set all along it. You can't see all the table, you know, and even in the bit you can see, there are 9 cups, counting the one the March Hare has got in his hand. That's the March Hare with the long ears and straws mixed up with his hair. The straws showed he was mad. I don't know why. Never twist up straws among your hair, for fear people should think you're mad. There was a nice green armchair at the end of the table that looked as if it was just meant for Alice. So she went and sat down in it. Then she had quite a long talk with the March Hare and the Hatter. The Dormouse didn't say much. You see, it was fast asleep generally, and it only just woke up for a moment now and then. As long as it was asleep, it was very useful to the March Hare and the Hatter, because it had a nice, round, soft head, just like a pillow. So they could put their elbows on it and lean across it and talk to each other quite comfortably. You wouldn't like people to use your head for a pillow, would you? But if you were fast asleep like the Dormouse, you wouldn't feel it, so I suppose you wouldn't care about it. I'm afraid they gave Alice very little to eat and drink. However, after a bit, she helped herself to some tea and bread and butter. Only I don't quite see where she got the bread and butter. And she had no plate for it. Nobody seems to have a plate except the Hatter. I believe the March Hare must have had one as well, because when they all moved one place on, that was the rule at this curious tea party, and Alice had to go into the place of the March Hare, she found he had just upset the milk jug into his plate, so I suppose his plate and the milk jug are hidden behind that large teapot. The Hatter used to carry about hats to sell, and even the one that he's got on his head is meant to be sold. You see, it's got its price marked on it. A 10 and a 6. That means 10 shillings and 6 pence. Wasn't that a funny way of selling hats? And hasn't he got a beautiful necktie on? Such a lovely yellow tie with large red spots. He has just got up to say to Alice, "Your hair wants cutting." That was a rude thing to say, wasn't it? And do you think her hair does want cutting? I think it's very pretty length, just the right length. End of chapter 10. Chapter 11 of the Nursery Alice by Lewis Carroll. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Queen's Garden. This is a little bit of the beautiful garden I told you about. You see, Alice had managed at last to get quite small, so that she could go through the little door. I suppose she was about as tall as a mouse, if it stood on its hind legs. So, of course, this was a very tiny rose tree, and these are very tiny gardeners. What funny little men they are. But are they men, do you think? I think they must be live cards, with just a head and arms and legs so as to look like little men. And what are they doing with that red paint, I wonder? Well, you see, this is what they told Alice. The Queen of Hearts wanted to have a red rose tree just in that corner, and these poor little gardeners had made a great mistake and had put in a white one instead, and they were so frightened about it because the Queen was sure to be angry, and then she would order all their heads to be cut off. She was a dreadfully savage queen, and that was the way she always did when she was angry with people. Off with their heads! They didn't really cut their heads off, you know, because nobody ever obeyed her, but that was what she always said. Now, can't you guess what the poor little gardeners are trying to do? They're trying to paint the roses red, and they're in a great hurry to get it done before the Queen comes. And then perhaps the Queen won't find out it was a white rose tree to begin with, and then perhaps the little men won't get their heads cut off. You see, there were 5 large white roses on the tree, Such a job to get them all painted red. But they've got 3½ done now, and if only they wouldn't stop to talk. Work away, little men, do work away, or the queen will be coming before it's done, and if she finds any white roses on the tree, do you know what will happen? It will be off with their heads. Oh, work away, my little men, hurry, hurry! The queen has come, and isn't she angry? Oh, my poor little Alice. End of chapter 11. Chapter 12 of the Nursery Alice by Lewis Carroll. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Lobster Quadrille. Did you ever play at croquet? There are large wooden balls painted with different colors that you have to roll about, and arches of wire that you have to send them through, and great wooden mallets with long handles to knock the balls about with. Now look at the picture and you'll see that Alice has just been playing a game of croquet. But she couldn't play with that great red what's-its-name in her arms. Why, how could she hold the mallet? Why, my dear child, that great red what's-its-name, its real name is a flamingo, is the mallet. In this croquet game, the balls were live hedgehogs. You know a hedgehog can roll itself up into a ball? And the mallets were live flamingos. So Alice is just resting from the game for a minute to have a chat with that dear old thing, the Duchess. And of course she keeps her mallet under her arm so as not to lose it. But I don't think she was a dear old thing, one bit. To call her baby a pig, and to want to chop off Alice's head? Oh, that was only a joke about chopping off Alice's head. And as to the baby, why, it was a pig, you know. And just look at her smile. Why, it's wider than all Alice's head, and yet you can only see half of it. Well, they'd only had a very little chat when the Queen came and took Alice away to see the Griffin and the Mock Turtle. You don't know what a griffin is? Well, do you know anything? That's the question. However, look at the picture. That creature with a red head and red claws and green scales is the griffin. Now you know. And the other's the mock turtle. It's got a calf's head because calf's head is used to make mock turtle soup. Now you know. But what are they doing, going round and round Alice like that? Why, I thought of course you'd know that. They're dancing a lobster quadrille. And next time you meet a griffin and a mock turtle, I dare say they'll dance it for you, if you ask them prettily. Only don't let them come quite close, or they'll be treading on your toes as they did on poor Alice's. End of chapter 12. Chapter 13 of the Nursery Alice by Lewis Carroll. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Who Stole the Tarts? Did you ever hear how the Queen of Hearts made some tarts? And can you tell me what became of them? Why, of course I can. Doesn't the song tell all about it? The Queen of Hearts, she made some tarts all on a summer day. The Knave of Hearts, he stole those tarts and took them quite away. Well, yes, the song says so, but it would never do to punish the poor knave just because there was a song about him. They had to take him prisoner and put chains on his wrists and bring him before the King of Hearts so that there might be a regular trial. Now, if you look at the big picture at the beginning of this book, you'll see what a grand thing a trial is when the judge is a king. The king is very grand, isn't he? But he doesn't look very happy. I think that big crown on the top of his wig must be very heavy and uncomfortable. But he had to wear them both, you see, so that people might know he was a judge and a king. And doesn't the Queen look cross? She can see the dish of tarts on the table that she had taken such trouble to make. And she could see the bad knave. Do you see the chains hanging from his wrists? That stole them away from her, so I don't think it's any wonder if she does feel a little cross. The White Rabbit is standing near the king reading out the song to tell everybody what a bad knave he is, and the jury, you can just see two of them up in the jury box, the frog and the duck, have to settle whether he's guilty or not guilty. Now I'll tell you about the accident that happened to Alice. You see, she was sitting close by the jury box, and she was called as a witness. You know what a witness is. A witness is a person who has seen the prisoner do whatever he's accused of, or at any rate knows something that's important in the trial. But Alice hadn't seen the queen make the tarts, and she hadn't seen the knave take the tarts. And in fact, she didn't know anything about it, so why in the world they wanted her to be a witness, I'm sure I can't tell you. Anyhow, they did want her, and the White Rabbit blew his big trumpet and shouted out, "Alice!" And so Alice jumped up in a great hurry, and then what do you think happened? Why, her skirt caught against the jury box and tipped it over, and all the poor little jurors came tumbling out of it. Let's try if we can make out all the 12. You know there ought to be 12 to make up a jury. I see the frog, and the dormouse, and the rat, and the ferret, and the hedgehog, and the lizard, and the bantam-cock, and the mole, and the duck, and the squirrel, and the screaming bird with a long beak just behind the mole. But that only makes 11. We must find one more creature. Oh, do you see a little white head coming out behind the mole, and just under the duck's beak? Oh, that makes up 12. Mr. Tenniel says the screaming bird is a storkling. Of course you know what that is. And the little white head is a mouseling. Isn't it a little darling? Alice picked them all up again very carefully, and I hope they weren't much hurt. End of chapter 13. Chapter 14 of the Nursery Alice by Lewis Carroll. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Shower of Cards. Oh dear, what is it all about? And what's happening to Alice? Well, I'll tell you all about it as well as I can. The way the trial ended was this. The king wanted the jury to settle whether the Knave of Hearts was guilty or not guilty. That means that they were to settle whether he had stolen the tarts, or if somebody else had taken them. But the wicked queen wanted to have his punishment settled first of all. That wasn't at all fair, was it? Because, supposing he never took the tarts, then of course he oughtn't to be punished. Would you like to be punished for something you hadn't done? So Alice said, "Stuff and nonsense." So the queen said, "Off with her head!" Just what she always said when she was angry. So Alice said, "Who cares for you? You're nothing but a pack of cards." So they were all very angry and flew up into the air and came tumbling down again all over Alice, just like a shower of rain. And I think you'll never guess what happened next. The next thing was, Alice woke up out of her curious dream, and she found that the cards were only some leaves off the tree that the wind had blown down upon her face. Wouldn't it be a nice thing to have a curious dream just like Alice? The best plan is this. First lie down under a tree and wait till a white rabbit runs by with a watch in his hand, then shut your eyes and pretend to be dear little Alice. Goodbye, Alice dear. Goodbye. The end of chapter 14. Recording by Scotty Smith. End of the Nursery Alice by Lewis Carroll.